path from C to A. And we say that the temporal graph is temporally connected if the graph contains a temporal path from me to U for every ordered pair du on vertices of the graph. In the temporal reachability network creation game that we studied, the model is the following. We have a complete temporal host graph with lifetime t. This assumption is not too strong because for several network creation games, the host graph is a complete graph, and the vertices of the graph are the selfish agents that want to play the game. Each agent is allowed to buy a subset of edges that are incident to her, and if we denote by yes the strategy profile of the agents, then the network formed by the agents is denoted by G of S, and it is given by the union of all the edges that have been bought by the agents. So the network that is formed by the agent, G of S, is an undirected communication network because the host graph is undirected. This means that once an agent bought an edge in the network, that edge can be used by all the other agents in both directions. So, the directions that you see here are only needed to specify which are the agents that are buying the edges. For example, this edge is bought by agent B, the edge from C to B is bought by agent C, and the edge DC is bought by the agent D. Okay? And the cost function each agent wants to minimize is given by a linear combination of the number of edges that are bought by the agent and the number of vertices that are not temporally reachable by that agent in the network that is formed, okay, in the graph G of S. The penalty that is associated with each unreachable vertex in the formed network is set to a value that is strictly larger than 1 because we want to incentivize the agents to form a temporally connected network. For example, if we look at the cost of agent A, we have that the cost of agent A is K because agent A is buying no edge, but at the same time, agent A cannot reach D by a temporal path. So this is not the best strategy for agent A because, for example, agent A could buy the edge towards D, and in this way, the agent A decreases self-cost from K to 1. And the network, now that the agents are formed, is a temporally connected network, okay? Furthermore, in this specific configuration, we can somehow check that agent A is playing a best possible strategy, and this is called a best response. And we say that the network that is formed by the agents is stable if every agent is playing a best response. The important questions that we would like to address when we study network creation games are the following. First of all, we want to analyze and understand under which conditions the game admits stable networks. Then there are questions related to the computational complexity aspects of the game. In particular, we want to understand whether two decision problems are either polynomial time solvable or NP-hard. The first decision problem is the following. Given a strategy profile S and given an agent X, we want to understand whether agent X is playing a best response. If the answer to this question is that the problem is polynomial time solvable, then there is no other question that we want to somehow, for which we would like to provide an answer. If the answer to this question is that the problem is NP-hard, then there is a more difficult question, which is still unresolved in several network creation games. There is only one exception, if I remember correctly. In particular, we want to understand whether the network formed by the agents is stable, which means that we have to understand if all the agents are playing their best responses at the same time. Okay? So it's a more difficult question. And finally, we want to analyze the quality of stable networks. And this can be done by providing upper and lower bounds to the price of anarchy of the game. The price of anarchy is a measure that was introduced in the seminar paper on algorithmic game theory by Koutsoupias and Papadimitriou in 1999. And the price of anarchy is a measure that wants to provide an evaluation of the performances of the system that is governed by a bunch of selfish agents with respect to the performance of the same system which is governed by a central authority that wants to optimize the social welfare. And the price of anarchy is formally defined as the worst case ratio between the social cost of stable networks and the social cost of an optimal solution, where the social cost of a strategy profile X, S, is equal to the overall sum of the costs that are recurrent by all the agents in that strategy profile. So we already observed that stable networks are always temporally connected in our game, but this is also true for optimal solutions. They must always be temporally connected. So if we want to provide good bounds to the price of anarchy, we need to provide good bounds to the worst case size of stable networks, basically. So if we think of the problem for this case of static graphs, meaning host graphs with lifetime equal to 1, then the answer to the 4 questions are trivial, because the game is a potential game, so it belongs to a specific class of games that do always admit stable networks, and it's easy to see that a stable network, a network formed by the agents is stable if and only if it is a spanning tree, which means that the price of anarchy of the game is 1 in this case. And it's also easy to claim that the 2 decision problems that are associated with question 2 and question 3 are solvable in polynomial time. The situation becomes more interesting when we consider somehow the temporal aspects of the game. So we look at the host graph with lifetime t, which is greater than or equal to 2. As I told you in the introduction, we were the first one who introduced and studied this problem. So now I'm going to present the list of all the results we achieved in our paper. So first of all, when we add the temporal aspects in the game is no longer a potential game. So there is a theorem in our paper that proves that temporal reachability network creation game is not a potential game in general. And to prove that the game is not a potential game, basically we constructed a host graph and we defined the strategy profile S that induces a non-stable network. And we also proved that there is a cyclic sequence of improving moves for the agents that brings the agents back to the original unstable network we started with. Okay, that's this result is not such a surprising result, because this is exactly the case for most of the network creation games that have been studied. Almost all the network creation games are not potential games. Okay. So in order to be able to answer to question number 1, we had to find different approaches. In particular, we proved that if the host graph has a lifetime of 2, then it always contains a network that is stable. And the reason is that in the host graph, there is always a spanning tree whose edges all have the same time label. So if we consider a strategy profile that induces exactly that spanning tree, the strategy profile is clearly stable. So the network induced by the agents is clearly stable because it's a spanning tree which is temporally connected and it minimizes the number of edges at the same time. But unfortunately, the approach that we used for proving that complete host graphs with lifetime t equals to 2 does not work for host graphs with lifetime 3 or larger. So the problem is still open for basically almost all the host graphs. And this is one of the most important problems that is left open in our paper. Okay, now coming to the computational complexity aspects of the game. Concerning question number 2, in which we want to understand whether an agent X is playing a best response or not, we provided quite of standard reduction for the world of network creation games and proved that this is an NP-hard problem. The reduction is from the set cover problem instance. So we defined a host graph, which in our case has a lifetime of 2. All the missing edges here that are not depicted have a time label that is equal to 2. And we also defined a strategy profile that induces basically a set cover problem instance inside the game. And now, if we look at the player X that wants to join the network, we proved in our paper that computing a best response for X is equivalent to solving the set cover problem instance. Okay, that's basically the idea of the proof, so I'm not going to go through the details of this proof. Okay, so concerning question number 3 of whether the network formed by the agents is stable or not, we were able to provide an answer. And again, this problem is NP-hard for complete host graphs with a lifetime 3 that is equal to 3 or larger. The reduction, as you can see, is similar to the reduction we had for the previous theorem, but it's a little bit more involved, and there is a reason for this. The reduction has to guarantee 3 properties at the same time. The first property is that there must be an agent, which is X in this case, for which the problem of understanding whether the agent is playing a best response or not must be NP-hard. The graph that is formed by the agents must be temporally connected, as otherwise it would not be stable. We already know this. And as a third property, which was a sufficient somehow property, which is a property that is sufficient to complete the proof, we proved that all the other agents but X are playing their best response in the strategy profile. Okay. So concerning the computational complexity aspects of the game, I would say that the problem is well solved somehow. And now let me move to the last question, important question, which is providing upper and lower bounds to the price of anarchy of the game. In our paper, we provided 1 lower bound and 2 different upper bounds for the price of anarchy. So the first lower bound is based on a construction that was given by Kempe, Kleinberg, and Kumar in the seminal paper on temporal reachability problem. And basically, the authors of that paper constructed a temporally connected log n dimensional FF cube that has n vertices and then log n edges that is minimal. By minimal, I mean that it's not possible to delete an edge from the hypercube and still have a temporally connected graph. Okay? Here is an example of the construction for the 3-dimensional hypercube. What we did in our paper was the following. So we embedded this hypercube in complete host graphs where the missing edges all have the same type label of 1 plus log n. And we proved that any strategy profile that induces the hypercube is stable. So there are stable networks of size n log n. At the same time, as all the missing edges all have the same time label, which is 1 plus log n, there is a spanning tree in the host graph, which consists of edges with the same time label. That spanning tree is temporally connected, so it is a social optimum, which basically means that we provided a lower bound of omega of log n to the price of anarchy of the game. Concerning the upper bounds to the price of anarchy, as I said, we provided 2 different upper bounds, one which is easy and one which is a little bit more involved. The easy upper bound on the price of anarchy is the following. So we proved that the size of stable networks is at most the lifetime of the host graph multiplied by n minus 1. Actually, in our paper, we provide a slightly better upper bound to the price of anarchy, but it's not so important. And the reason why this upper bound is correct is very simple. If we pick any stable network, G of S, like this one, and we look at the subgraph of the network that is induced by the edges that have the same time label, that subgraph must be a forest. It cannot contain a cycle, as otherwise an agent that owns an edge of the cycle would delete that edge without compromising the temporal connectivity of the formed network. So this implies, of course, an upper bound to the place of anarchy, which is T. Depends on the lifetime of the host graph. This upper bound is good, of course, if the lifetime of the host graph is a small value, but it is not good if the lifetime of the host graph is a large value. To overcome to this problem, we provided a second upper bound to the place of anarchy that does not depend on the lifetime of the host graph. The other upper bound we provided somehow exploited the concept of necessary edge in stable networks. So if we pick a stable network and we look at an agent that is buying an edge in that network, and we ask why the agent is buying that edge in the network, the answer to this question is very simple. Agent V buys an edge E in the network because that edge is necessary for V to temporally reach some other vertices U in the network that has been formed, which means that V cannot reach U in the network G of S minus DAG. By exploiting somehow the concept of necessary edge, we discovered a forbidden structure, which is the structure that you see here, that never appears in stable networks. I'm not going to explain the details of this forbidden structure. It's a structure formed by 6 edges, but whenever the structure appears in the network that is formed by the agents, there is an agent that can always delete an edge. Okay? And we used a simple but very elegant counting argument to prove that if the network formed by the agents contains omega of n root n edges, then the forbidden structure must appear somewhere in the network. And so the network cannot be stable. So this means that a stable network has a size which is order of n root n. And this provides clearly an upper bound of order of root n to the price of anarchy of the game. Okay? So these are all the results that we proved in our paper for the model of selfish agents, but we also looked at other types of agents. And in particular, we consider also the model of a greedy agent. This model was introduced by Lenzner 11 years ago to avoid the problem of the hardness computing best responses for the players. And the strategy that is allowed to a greedy agent V in the network G of S that is formed by the strategy profile is very simple. The agent V is allowed to either add a new edge incident to L to the network, or the agent V can delete an edge from S of V, or the agent can swap an edge. Swapping an edge means that the agent can delete one edge and then add another edge at the same time. Okay? As you can understand, the model of a greedy agent is weaker than the model of selfish agent I introduced at the beginning of my talk, which basically means that if a network is stable according to the concept of selfish agent, it is also stable according to the model of a greedy agent. And in this case, we say that the network is also greedy stable if it is stable according to the model of a greedy agent. The converse is not true in general, because there might be greedy stable networks that are not stable. For example, the network that you see here is stable, is greedy stable, sorry, but it is not stable because agent B can delete the 2 edges she owns here and buy the edge towards B. Okay? So because of this, of the containment of stable networks in the set of greedy stable networks, basically we can import almost all the results we proved for the model of selfish agents into the model for greedy agents. So the only results that we cannot import are basically the upper bounds to the price of anarchy of the game. But what we did in our paper was the following. We proved the two upper bounds of the price of anarchy of the game for the model of greedy agents. Okay, so this means that we also have the same upper bounds for the model of greedy agents on the price of anarchy. Okay. So, to summarize, the main novelty of our paper was a combination of temporal graphs with network creation games. And in particular, we defined the first temporal network creation game, which was the temporal reachability network creation game, for which we provided some preliminary results. And here is a list of some open problems. So, as we saw, we proved the existence of stable networks only for the case in which the host graph has a lifetime of 2. So this problem is open in general, and this is the, as I said, the main important open problem here. We conjecture that the answer to this question is yes, but so far we didn't manage to find a proof, even for the case of temporal host graphs with lifetime 3. Then there are open problems related to the bounds to the price of anarchy of the game, because we proved upper and lower bounds that are not matching. In particular, for host graphs with a large lifetime, basically we have this gap of log n versus root n for the lower and the upper bound, respectively. What is the exact value of the price of anarchy of the game? We don't know, of course. But we conjecture that the price of anarchy of the game is low because we believe that stable networks must be sparse. And finally, if you like network creation games, you can pick, of course, your favorite network creation games and define a temporal network creation games on top of it. So this is all I wanted to say, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Davide. Questions from the audience first? Yes? Wait.
So when you introduce the greedy agents,
Yes.
Are we assuming that all vertices are greedy, or are there just some?
All the agents are uniform, so they are all greedy.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
So you provided lower and upper bounds for greedy agents and not greedy agents. Do you have some kind of intuition where the price of anarchy is higher or lower? So possibly it's...
So we didn't explore the model of greedy agents that much, but for selfish agents, we tried to improve our upper bound to the price of anarchy because we somehow believe that the real upper bound to the price of anarchy is very close to the lower bound. We cannot guess how much close it is, but we believe that is probably polylogarithmic in the number of vertices of the graph. At least this is my guess, personal guess.
And possibly strictly different from the price of anarchy for greedy agents.
That might be.
Okay.
More questions from the online people or from here? Okay, so I wanted to ask you, did you ever consider the case where the temporal graph has more than one labels per edge?
So we defined the model with a single label for each edge, but all the results that we proved hold for the case in which we have multiple labels.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the agent can only buy one single label for the edge.
I see. Okay.
Okay. I didn't say that, but
thanks a lot. So Hans says no to what? The bounds can only be log n apart.
Yeah, Hans is
Yes.
the co-author of this paper.
Yes, I know. Yeah, that's the no confused me. Okay, good. Thank you very much again.
Thank you for the time.